So we're going to start with the second angel's message here. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So during this presentation, first we're going to define what fornication is, and then we're going to define later what wine is, and we're going to define what Babylon is. Because when people say Babylon is fallen, some people think that's just Babylon. I mean, just the Vatican, and that's it. That's not the definition that we're given, although it's part of it. So these things need to be understood in context what the full meaning is of it. Let's first go to fornication. Fornication generally refers to consensual sexual intercourse between two people who are not married to each other. Notice it is not forced, it's consensual. So when we talk about the wrath of her fornication, we can see that's not going to be forced. Everybody's going to want to join Babylon. Everybody's going to want to join these people. It's not going to be forced at all. In the original Greek version of the New Testament, the term porneia, which is defined as prostitution, is used 25 times, including variants such as genitive, and it's a word I can't pronounce or or mean, define. This is from Wikipedia. Many modern post-World War II Bible translations completely avoid the use of fornicators, or fornication. English Standard Version, New Living Versions, and you can read the other ones down there, and Contemporary English Version do not use the terms fornication or fornicators. Where the translation may use fornication, another translation may use whoredom, sexual immortality, like in Matthew 19:9, or more simply, immoral or immortality, so that there's other ways that you can see it. And continuing from Wikipedia, in Latin, the term fornix means arch or vault. In ancient Rome, prostitutes waited for their customers out of the rain under vaulted ceilings, and fornix became an euphemism for brothels. And the Latin verb fornicare referred to a man visiting a brothel. So when you see this talks about fornication, there's nothing forced there. It's voluntary, and I believe a lot of the churches are going to be running to join with this here at the time of the end. The Oxford English Dictionary records figurative use as well, or forsaking of God for idols. And you see that goes back to the Ten Commandments. We are not to have any idols. We're only to worship our Heavenly Father, and that's it. Babylon. Babylon, according to dictionary.com, Babylon is any place of sin and corruption. So according to this definition, it's any place. And we will see what Mrs. White says about it later. And we also see that it is a famous city from ancient Mesopotamia, whose ruins lie in modern-day Iraq, 59 miles southwest of Baghdad. The name is derived from, you can see that stuff, which in Akkadian meant gate of God or gate of gods, given as Babylon in Greek. In its time, it was a great culture and religious centers. And I could go and talk about that, but it's not in this subject. And you can see a picture line of Babylon on the Ishtar Gate there. That there is all from Wikipedia. So let's go back to the text and read what the text says. And Revelation 14:8 is also expanded in Revelation 18. Although this here presentation is about Revelation 14. And we will repeat this again. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And we're going to, like I said before, we're going to look at wine, what wine, the definition of wine is. Going to Revelation 18, which further expands on this here same subject. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with its glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and it has become the habitation of devils. So when you see the word habitation there, habitation means that that's where their home is. They are living there. And the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So you can see this is where this is where their home is. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And there's nothing going to be forced or not blackmailed. They voluntarily go there and do this. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And if you watch the nation today, are certain very wealthy nations, and all the other nations wants to be friends with these very rich nations. And so there's nothing going to be forced. They are wanting to have this here get together. I'll put it get together. Defining Babylon. So I said before we're going to define Babylon, and I think there's a couple terms where Mrs. White talks about what Babylon is. She also says what it's not in a couple places. The existing confusion or conflicting creeds and sects is fitly represented by the term Babylon, which prophecy applies to the world-loving churches of the last days. So here, Babylon is defined as any church-loving, world-loving churches that are present today. Many seek to make a heaven for themselves by obtaining riches and power. They speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak lawfully, trampling on human rights, and we don't see that nearly as much as we do some of the other nations, and disregarding divine authority. And you see that everywhere. They say, shall we do this? Shall they do that? And once in a great while, you'll see somebody, well, let's ask God about it. The proud may be for a time in great power, but may see success in all that they undertake. But in the end, they will find only disappointment and wretchedness. In other words, there's no peace and loving tenderness that will be there except for under Christ, because you'll be all trampled on. And that's from the book Christ Triumphant. The time of God's investigation is at hand. The Most High will come down to see that which rebel humans have built it. His sovereign power will be revealed. The work of human pride will be laid low. In other words, I believe what she's saying there is a lot of these big fancy cities, which I have a picture below, they will be all laid low. That's one of the reasons, just one of the reasons I believe she says comes out of the cities. The Lord bringeth the counsel of the heathen to naught. In other words, when they have their heathen, it's not going to mean anything. He maketh the devices of the people of none effect. The counsel of the Lord standeth forever, the thoughts of his heart to all generations. And that's in two different books. Coming out of Babylon. And this here, the second angel is all about coming out of Babylon. And this is the presentation that is the hardest to give, because later we're going to talk about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, people that I absolutely had my whole life with, and the people that I love these people. But there's that's why it's difficult to talk about some things that we're going to talk about later on. As God called the children of Israel out of Egypt, that they might keep his Sabbath, not the Jewish Sabbath, but his Sabbath. So he calls his people out of Babylon, that they may not worship the beast or his image. That is one of the reasons right there that you're going to be called out of Babylon, because you cannot keep his Sabbath when you're in Babylon. That's what it says there. The man of sin who thought to change times and laws has exalted himself above God by presenting a spirited Sabbath to the world. And the third angel's message, we're going to talk more about the seventh-day Sabbath and the mark of the beast. The Christian world has accepted the child of the papacy and cradled and nourished it, thus defying God by removing his memorial and setting up a rival Sabbath. After the truth has been proclaimed as a witness to all nations, every conceivable power of evil will be set in operation. And this here will be future. See, there's this after it's proclaimed. Lo, here is Christ. Lo, he is there. This is the truth. I have a message from God. He has sent me with great light. Then there will be a removing of the landmarks and an attempt to tear down the pillars of our faith. I thought that that had already been done. But here she tells us that it's going to come again. And this is going to be more pronounced when it happens next time. This is one of the reasons why we must have these doctrines in our heart. They must become part of our life. A more decided effort will be made to exalt the false Sabbath and to cast contempt upon God himself. That's what it talks about, blaspheming God, by supplanting the day that he has blessed and sanctified. This false Sabbath is to be enforced by a law. No, it's going to be an oppressive law. Satan and his angels are wide awake and intensely active, working with energy and persuasive, don't pronounce that word correctly, through human instrumentalities to bring about his purpose of obliterating from the mind the mind of men, the knowledge of God. And all he has to start with is put a doubt in there. A few weeks ago, I talked about belief and unbelief. Once a doubt gets in there, then Satan will work his magic to get in there. You cannot allow that to happen. But while Satan works with his lying wonders, which Abel talked about, the time will be fulfilled, foretold in the Revelation, and the mighty angel shall lighten the earth with his glory, will proclaim the fall of Babylon and the call of God's people to forsake her. Now, I'll ask a question. We're going to talk about it more later. Have you heard any Seventh-day Adventists talk about coming out of Babylon? They don't. Most of them don't talk about it. There's a few that talk about it. But here it doesn't just say come out. It says to forsake her, forsake Babylon. Now we're going to define what wine is. And this is from the 7th volume of the Bible commentaries. And like Abel said earlier, I put down below, do not be deceived. You must go to the Holy Scriptures and have your faith completely in the Holy Scriptures so you won't be deceived. This is the same message that was given by the second angel. Babylon is fallen because she had made all nations drink of the wine of her wrath, of her fornication. What is that wine? That is her false doctrines. This is why that you have to be solidified in the doctrines that Christ has set up in the middle of the 1800s. She has given to the world a false Sabbath instead of a false Sabbath of the fourth commandment, instead of the Sabbath of the fourth commandment, and has repeated the falsehood that Satan first told to Eve in Eden, the natural immortality of the soul, which Abel also talked about. Many kindred errors she has spread far and wide for teaching, for doctrines, the commandments of men. And I seen when I told you at the beginning that we're going to define things, Mrs. White defines a lot of things. But first, you have to read her. And our testimony must not be like Peter's testimony, not be like Peter's testimony here. Remember when the cock crowed 3 times, he denied Christ? Well, when this happens to us, we cannot deny Christ. We cannot deny that it's the Father and the Son. We cannot deny that the feast are statutes and we should be keeping them. And that will bring us closer and closer to Jesus Christ. So we cannot deny that. And I believe that needs to be part of the three angels message. But I said that this is some of the opinions. That's some of the opinions that I have concerning Babylon, the symbol of the apostate church. He says to his ministers of judgment, her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. From Christ Objects Lessons, and that's from Revelation 18. Any church that goes this way, she refers to as an apostate church. We also know that there's people that do the same thing. They leave the church and go their own way and follow these other people. And God says right there, God hath remembered her iniquities. The churches have been described in the 18th chapter of Revelation. Why are the message of Revelation 14 given? Because the principles of the churches have begun corrupted. You look at the SDA churches today. Have they been corrupted? I'm not going to say. That's for everybody to decide on their own. This is some of those things you have to decide when you make decisions of what you're going to, the standards that you have. It is our individual duty to walk humbly with God. We are not to seek any strange new message. We are not to think that the chosen ones of God who are trying to walk in the light compose law. This is from one of her notebook leaves. And if you listen to John in his DVDs, he talks about this, about following humbly with, and not to follow any strange things. Oh, no, I was going to say a lot of the new light is actually old light has been discovered that we need to start observing. They've always been there. After the truth has been proclaimed as a witness to all nations, every conceivable power of evil will be set in operation. The minds will be confused by the many voices crying, lo, here is Christ. Oh, he is there. This is the truth. I have the message from God. He has sent me with great light. Then there will be a removing of the landmarks and an attempt to tear down the pillars of our faith. A more decided effort will be made to exalt the false Sabbath and to cast contempt upon God himself by supplementing days blessed and sanctified. The false Sabbath is to be enforced by an oppressive law, which is what we saw earlier. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, Sunday is the day," then ask them, where in the Bible was it blessed and sanctified? They will say, "Well, it was changed." Well, was that changed? Was any day blessed and sanctified? You show me from the Bible where it was blessed and sanctified. They won't find it. Then come back and say the seventh day Sabbath was blessed and sanctified, not just in the fourth commandment, but that happened on the seventh day of creation. The fallen denominational churches are Babylon. There she defines again Babylon is. Babylon has been fostering poisonous doctrines, the wine of error. Remember, wine means doctrines. This wine of error is made up of false doctrines, such as the natural immortality of the soul, the eternal torment of the wicked, the denial of the pre-existence of Christ prior to his birth in Bethlehem, which I believe she's talking about there is part of the Trinity stuff, birth in Bethlehem, and advocating and exalting the first day of the week above God's holy and sanctified day. That's from Testimonies to Ministers. So we go to and part of the state of the dead, go to 1 Thessalonians. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, not silently, with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Why? Because they will hear it. He's not coming secret rapture like some of these other churches talk about. Then, see, that's afterwards. Then, which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. And what are we to do about this message? Wherefore, comfort one another with these words. And I know a lot of times when I email people, I tell them, you are blessed. Because, people today, not a lot of people are telling people, you're blessed. They're left in confusion. They're left wondering. They have self-doubt. When you tell them they're blessed, it means something to me. I know when I was told that, it means something to me. He did not go to heaven after he died. And this is what Abel was talking about, the state of the dead. Lazarus represents the suffering poor who believe in Christ. When the trumpet sounds and all that are in the graves hear Christ's voice. So it's not just, his voice is not just going to open up the graves. They're going to hear Christ's voice and come forth. They will receive their reward, for the faith in God was not merely theory, but a reality. No, it's not a conspiracy theory. It is a reality. And you ever wonder what it would have been like to be among these people here when Lazarus came forth? You see some of the amazement on some of these people's faces. When this happens in the future, what a joyful experience it'll be. And it'll be the universe will all be watching. Everybody will be watching when this happens. This was also the time for the message of the second angel, who flying through the midst of heaven cried, Babylon is fallen, that great city. That message was first proclaimed by the servants of God in the summer of 1844. As a result, many left fallen churches coming out of battle with my people. In connection with this message, the midnight cry was given, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out and meet him. In every part of the land, light was given concerning this message. The cry aroused thousands It went from city to city, from village to village, and into the remote country regions. It reached the learned, the talented, as well as the obscure, and humble. And why did this happen back then? I believe that this is an example of um, of what's going to happen at the end when people are going to be aroused out of their sin, and they're going to come by multitudes. And I believe that the people that are presenting the three angels message are going to be shocked to see how God works. We are here only planting seeds. When Jesus began his public ministry, he cleansed the temple from its sacrilegious uh, profanation. In other words, I have problems with. Among the last acts of his ministry was a second cleansing of the temple. To the last work of the warning of the world, two distinct calls are made to the churches. Second angel's message, Babylon is called fallen, is fallen, that great city, because, and see here, it says why that that this message is going out. When you tell people that Babylon is fallen, here's the reason that it has fallen. It says, because she has made all nations drink of the wine or the doctrine of the wrath of her fornication, and allowed all the nations, all the churches to come together. That's why that is why it has fallen. And in the loud cry of the third angel's message, a voice is heard from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye not receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached into heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. And she's talking about the third angel's message here. That's why I've said at the beginning, these three angels' message, even though they're separate and distinct, are also the same message. Uh, they're intertwined, and that's from Review and Herald and the seventh volume of Bible commentaries. How to tell the churches apart. I saw that since the second angel proclaimed the fall of the churches, they have been growing more and more corrupt. They bear the name of Christ's followers. Yet it is impossible to distinguish them from the world. Ministers take their text from the Word of God, but preach smooth things. Is this the natural heart feels no objection? So they're putting them to sleep. And when you are going to your church, if you're going to a Seventh-day Adventist church, when you go to that church, can you distinguish them from the rest of the world? The only thing a lot of the times, the only thing you can distinguish as different is that they're going to church on the seventh day. But are they keeping it holy? Are they reverencing God? Or are they sitting in church doing this? I told someone not long ago, if you went and what would be the analysis if you went and asked everybody that came out of the church, what was the sermon about today? I have a feeling in some churches, half of them won't know. And I've been there. And that there will, uh, um, this here will continue after this picture. And I put this up there because see, here they've got the Father, the Son, the Mary, and the Holy Spirit above them as a dove. And you'll see this in some churches. I have seen this in churches myself. The last few years, they have elevated Mary higher and higher and higher. Now, if you see this here, you see over here, They have one here, and then they have Mary over here. There was my wife and I went to a funeral, Willie's funeral, 2 or 3 months ago, and I couldn't come to Bible exploration. Says I won't be there because I'm going to a funeral, supporting, my wife and her family. They had this type there. Mary was on the right, and then they had a dove above. So, and pointed it out, and you know, it didn't impress anybody. It impressed me of what people are worshiping. There is nothing in the popular ministry that stirs the wrath of Satan, makes a sinner tremble, or applies to the heart and conscience the fearful realities of a judgment soon to come. Wicked men are generally pleased with a form of piety without true godliness, and they will aid and support such a religion. So when you see these, and I'm not saying the Seventh-day Adventist Church, when you go to these churches, are you seeing anybody there telling people to come out of Babylon? They preach love and grace, just like the other churches. And we're going to show here very soon why problems in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and some of the history of me trying to get information, and that's right here in this. And I'll tell you, he now before he started, one of the things I had an email where my email on a presentation, I wanted to ask him some questions, and I sent email there, and two people, secretaries of his, different locations, came back and said he will respond to you. And a few months later, he hadn't responded. So I sent it back to them. He hasn't responded. We have given him all your information. He will respond. Well, in this last uh, GC session, he was removed and voted out because a lot of people have lost faith in him. He got elected in 2015, I think it was. I'm going to read this right up here. He is the Director of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty for the Worldwide Seventh-day Adventist Church. Before his election in July of 2015, as the 60th General Conference section in San Antonio, Texas, he served as the church's liaison. And we're going to go and we're going to look at the definition of liaison. He was the church's liaison to the United Nations in New York and Geneva, and its representative within the international community, civic and political leaders. And one of the things I was going to ask him in the article that I sent them was, supposedly there was a document signed by the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the Vatican that we are no longer going to speak to the Vatican as a beast in Revelation 17, the first beast. I wanted to read that document. I wanted to have it. And that and some other things we're going to show you um, and if I had gotten that document, you all would have seen it. ISM definition: a close bond or connection, an illicit sexual relationship, communication for establishing and maintaining mutual understanding and cooperation as an example, as between parts of the armed forces. A person who establishes and maintains communication for mutual understanding and cooperation. So, with the other churches, where do you see in there anything about coming out of Babylon? It's not there. Where do you see anything in there about Seventh-day Sabbath? You don't. You don't see it. Of course, they already know that we keep the seventh day holy. And by the way, that's from Merriam-Webster dictionary. Many of the Protestant churches are following Rome's example. And I'll leave, you can go wild with that. are following Rome's example of, there's that word in, connection with the kings of the earth, state churches, by their relation to secular governments and other denominations, by seeking the favor of the world. And this is why before I said nothing's going to be forced. They're seeking the favor of the world. They're begging for this unity. And I believe that Christ says, not quite yet. Things that got to happen. And the term Babylon, confusion, may be appropriately applied to these bodies by professing to derive their doctrines from the Bible, yet divided into almost innumerable sects with widely conflicting creeds and theories. That's the great controversy. I didn't put down which controversy. God's word to his people is, come out from among them, be ye separate, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and I will be father unto you, and you shall be my sons and daughters. God's people are to be distinguished as a people who serve him fully, wholeheartedly, taking no honor to themselves, and remembering that by a most solemn covenant they have bound themselves to serve the Lord and him only. That goes back to the first four commandments. And here's something that it is my opinion today that the Seventh-day Adventist Church in format and mission today cannot in accordance carry out the second angel's message the way that it is presented in Revelation and in Mrs. White's writings. There is a big difference between promoting religious freedom versus telling folks that they must come out of Babylon, as told in Revelation 14 and 18. No, as commanded in Revelation 14 and 18. And I want to put that in there because I want people to know this is my opinion. It's not Bible Exploration's opinion. It's not other people. This is my opinion that you're hearing about today. I saw that God's people are on enchanted ground, and that some have lost nearly all sense of the shortness of time and worth of the soul. Pride has kept in among Sabbath keepers. And if pride has crept in among you, you need to ask Christ to help you work with that. Pride of dress and appearance. How do I look today? Said the angels. Sabbath keepers will have to die to self, die to pride, and love to approbation. That's from Early Writings. That's a wonderful book from Mrs. White. The second angel's message is about religious freedom. It's a picture I put in there. Now, this is the person that took his place. His name is Nelu Bercia. He was elected as a GC Public Affairs of Religious Liberty. He is their director. And I want to see you. You remember what we talked about the previous guy, what his role, look over here. Look at what his role is. My role is to generate strategic contacts within the United States and to protect the image of the church in the international contact. Why don't we protect the image of Jesus Christ? Why don't we tell people that they need to come out of those churches? And you haven't seen anything yet. There are many in the church who at heart belong to the world, but God calls upon those who claim to believe the advanced truth to raise above the present attitude of the popular churches today. And we have talked about among ourselves, when you hear something, you hear it, but then you have to do it. You have to put it into your life. Where is the self-denial? Where is the cross-bearing that Christ has said should characterize his followers? The reason we have so little influence upon unbelieving relatives and associates that we have manifested the decided difference in our practices from those of the world. Parents need to awake and purify their souls by practicing the truth in their home life. You see that? Practicing the truth in their home life, not just do as I tell you. They need to do it also. When we reach the standard that the Lord would have us reach, worldlings will regard Seventh-day Adventists as odd, singular, straight-faced extremists, not just the people at Bible explorations. There needs to be a huge amount of people that are shown to be different, to be shown that we keep the statutes and the laws of God. But instead, we are made a spectacle unto the world and to angels and to men. And I believe that that is because they just talk about the Sabbath. You ever wonder why there's like 1,000 people baptized, and 2 years later, most of them aren't in the church anymore? They have the excitement, but there's no conversion to apply it to them later. Now, this is one of the things that came to. I'm not going to talk about what it dealt with, but there was people that was talking about, and this is the delegates to vote. Motion to add the agenda review and discussion of the 2015 General Conference Administration Committee statement on immunization, specifically its claim about peer-reviewed scientific literature in addition to the Bible of Ellen G. White. And some people wanted to discuss it. But guess what? The delegates, yes, 310, no, 1,662. It was a big issue, but nobody wanted to talk about it. I believe that all things should be discussed openly. Anyway, that was a screenshot that I got from the 25 General Conference session. You've seen that picture before. Now, I want to read part of this, and then I'll let you finish it. This is in June 2016. Dale gave a speech at a United Nations conference titled Freedom of Religion or Belief in Sexuality, a conversation at that place, Nations in Geneva, Switzerland. He said that Christians have a responsibility based on the central Judeo-Christian belief that all human beings are created in God's image. This responsibility, he said, is to recognize the stamp of the divine in every person, to extend to them the love and respect that Christ modeled his relationship, even after the fallen humanity. I'll let you read that. But there was something left out, and I'll let you read that bottom. This is in 2023, 6 hours afterwards. What did the church do about that? There is need of the laying of a foundation different from the foundation which has been laid in the past. And look at the date. This is 1903. So when you talk about the Seventh-day Adventist leaders today, what has changed from this here? This is what Mrs. White said about them then. There is a need of laying a foundation different from the foundation which has been laid in the past. We have heard much about everything moving in the regular lines. When we see the regular lines are purified and refined, that they bear the mold of God of heaven, then it will be time to endorse these lines. You know, sometimes when she puts one of these words in there, but when we see that the message after message given by God has been received and accepted, yet no change has been made, we know that new power must be brought into the regular lines. The management of the regular lines must be entirely changed, newly organized. That was a General Conference Bulletin, April 10, 1903. That's something that the church will not want you to see today. Now, we have a new president, Seventh-day Adventist president. His name is Urton Kohler, if I pronounce that right. And this just happened July this year, not very long ago. Well, we're going to see what, and I know David Gates talks about him. We're going to look at a quote that he said. Kohler explained that his job is like holding a puzzle together, compared it to that of another recently elected church leader with South American ties, Pope Leo, the Catholic Church's first U.S.-born pontiff who has dual Peruvian citizenship. Why did he compare his role with the Pope? What's the matter with these people? And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city. Why? Because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. I have a question. Does that include people in the Seventh-day Adventist Church? I'll let you determine that on your own. That there comes from Religious News Service. From the beginning, successive, and we're going to go to Israel now. From the beginning, successive Israeli prime ministers have been fascinated by the concept of the Pope as an absolute ruler elected for life, a leader not held accountable to any judiciary or legislative control, using pyramidal and some type of structure. The supreme pontiff wielded extraordinary influence to shape the economic, political, and ideological work of not only the Catholic faithful, but the world at large. David Ben-Gurion, who was one of their prime ministers or presidents, once growled, never mind that nonsense about how many divisions does the Pope have. Look at how many people he can summon to his aid. For Mossad, appeal was sheer secrecy with him, with which the Vatican operated. So I'll ask you, what is he doing here? He is coveting the power of the Pope. By the way, I have that book, an ebook of it. And I used this quote before. We're getting close to the end. I used this quote before when I talked about Diop, and I know I'm not pronouncing it right. Thou shalt make how many covenants with them? Thou shalt make no covenant with them. And that comes from that document that I wanted to try to get that they signed, if they did sign it. And I've heard from numerous people that they did. God had said, and those who had recently rededicated themselves to the Lord at the altar set up before the ruins of his temple realized that the line of demarcation between his people and the world is ever to be kept unmistakably distinct. Have we done that? No. Why? Because we want to have, so that we have respect among them. It is to be kept unmistakably distinct. They refuse to enter into alliance with those who, through familiar with the requirements of God's law, would not yield to his claims. And this is the principle set forth in Deuteronomy, and that's Deuteronomy 28, I believe. In Deuteronomy, for the instruction of prosperity is dependent upon the continuance of the covenant relationship, which is what Brent talks about all the time. Never can we afford to compromise principles by entering into alliance with those who do not fear him. And so we should not be going and trying to improve our image with other nations and other groups. We should Our image should be the life of Christ. Christ should be the center, complete center of our church. And if they don't like it, then they can come out of Babylon or stay in Babylon. I presented this quote before in What is a Statute, Part 2. The curses are not for following the statutes. And that there is when I did the stats and the curses, that the last part of Matthew 4 that Brent talks about, that Elijah is going to come so that between the father and the sons, so that they don't receive the curses. Those curses are in Deuteronomy 28, and there's a lot of them. And I went through those. Protestants have tampered with and patronized popery. They have made compromises and concessions with papists themselves that the papists themselves are surprised to see. Yeah, because they're running to them, and they're surprised that they're doing that. Leo officially opened his pontiff by taking his first Popemobile tour through the Piazza, a rite of passage that has become synonymous with the papacy's global reach and this draw. The 69-year-old Augustinian missionary smiled and waved from the back of the truck to people waving U.S., Peruvian, and other national flags, and stopped to bless some babies in the crowd. During the Mass, Leo appeared to choke up when the two potent symbols of the papacy were placed on him: the lamb's wool stole over his shoulders and the fisherman's ring on his finger, as if the weight of responsibility of leading the 1.4 billion strong church had just sunk in. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was one of the last foreign officials to see Pope Francis before he died, led the U.S. delegation honoring the Chicago-born Leo Vance, paid his respects to the Argentine Pope tomb after arriving in Rome late Saturday. You see, in this transfer, you see the part that the United States had in. Biden, the vice president, was leading the way. And there you go. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the sea, over the kings of the earth. You see, one of the last persons to see Pope Francis was, here he is, right off the bat, talking to him. Referred to an earlier quotation about Israel. There's a guy that I knew that I met. His name is Barry Cormish. He was from Israel, a journalist, and I met him at a conference after he spoke. I went up and spoke to him. He said that the president of Israel, the prime minister, the one that I forget his name, in the 1990s, he said Barry Cormish said that he was a Jesuit. And whenever there was a problem in Israel, he would run to the Vatican to get information of what to do. That came from Barry Cormish. He's now passed away. Revelation 17:12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but received their power as one king, as kings, 1 hour with the beast. So here is more unity that's coming for these people. And you can compare it with Daniel 8, which is probably one of my favorite chapters, which, a lot of times I go back to them. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 noble ones toward the 4 winds of the heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. And you know who that is? That's what we've always said was the Vatican. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great towards the south, and towards the east, and towards the pleasant land, which is Jerusalem. And that in Daniel 8 is the verse which I have said before, that the Vatican will move at least some of their headquarters to Jerusalem. They're going to do something. I have don't know exactly how it's going to be done. But it says it there that the little horn is going to Jerusalem. That's Daniel 8, verses 9. Now, I told someone else that I would bring this up. Um, this happened in May 9th, 2024. Pope Francis announces dates of the opening and closing of the holy doors of the Jubilee in 2025 in Rome. God is leading out a chosen people, a church on the earth, whom he has made the depositories of his law. Did you know that you are made the depositories of God's law? And I hope your life is showing it, reflecting that. I hope my life is reflecting it. The church on the earth, whom he has made the depositories of his law, he has committed to them the sacred trust and eternal truth to be given to the world. He would reprove and correct them. The message to the Laodiceans is applicable to Seventh-day Adventists who have great light and have not walked in the light. Is that the condition of the church today? It is those who have made great profession but have not kept in step with their leader that will be spewed out of his mouth unless they repent. The message to pronounce the Seventh-day Adventist Church Babylon and call the people out of her does not come from any heavenly messenger or any human agent inspired by the Spirit of God. That was about people that's calling the Seventh-day Adventist Church Babylon. But in there, she is not walking in the light. And I heard another, and this is from the other part that we have already read. I'll go to, because we're short on time, I believe. We'll go to the last verse here. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. I showed you the other day where it's going to be fire and brimstone that's going to be repeated. I believe that that is going to be part of the three angels' message. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Some have a natural independence which leads them to think more highly of their own judgment. Look at me, I came up with this. Look at this. And you see, that's not what this is supposed to be. Why? Because it's all about Jesus Christ. Um, it leads them to think more highly of their own judgment than that of brethren. In so doing, they place themselves where they fail to obtain much knowledge that God would have them gain. Doctrines and plans paired with the law and the testimony. We should never feel too independent to learn from one another. And I tell you, since I went to Bible explorations, I have no idea you have no idea how much I have learned. From them is to go forth terrible denunciation. Babylon has fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink the wine wrath of her fornication. They are represented by the third angel that followed, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, or receives his mark on his forehead, the same should drink the wine of the wrath of God. That we talked about they are represented by the third angel that followed, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast, his angels, and receive mark in his forehead, his hand, then, but it says, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. And I believe that also before the third angel, that this is what we're going to tell you. You have to not receive the image and the marks. That's why I think that all the three angels' messages are intertwined together. Hebrews, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He started it, he's going to finish it. Our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, sitting down at the right hand of the throne of God. We are all waiting for this.
Yeah, it's amazing watching, listening, reading what Ellen White has to say about the future. She's trying to help us and guide us. It's Christ through her telling us all this stuff. Prepare.
Well, this is what
Well,
I've
this is
said before, is that people call her a
people call her
prophet. I say she may be a prophet, but that's her. She is a
a
messenger
messenger
to guide
to
us
guide us
through
through
the time of
the
the
time of
end.
the end.
The problem
The
is that
problem
a
is
lot of
a lot
people
of people
in the church
in the
don't read
church
her.
don't read her.
I
I
think
think
there's more
there's more
people
people
outside the
outside the
church now
church
that
now
read
that
her
read
than
her
are
that
that
are
are in the
in the
church.
church.
And the hope
And the
is that
hope
when
is
they
that when they
hear or
hear
read
or
these
read
things,
these things,
they will put it
they
to
will
heart.
put it to heart.
And this is why
And
I
this is
told
what I
Sandy
told
and Chris
Sandy and Chris
before. I
before.
believe that there's a lot more statute keepers that
That
that are
that
out
are
there that don't come out and talk
come out
about
and
it,
talk about it.
because
Because, you know,
they can see what happens to other statute keepers
statute
and peace
keepers.
keepers.
It doesn't make sense.
It's true. Hmm? Yeah, I was thinking about you talking about the union, the threefold union with the Catholicism and Protestantism and spiritualism. And when you bring that stuff up, man, when she talks about that stuff, talking with the dead folks and dead relatives and all, that's a big problem for the whole world.
But the churches are
The
going to
churches are
flock
going
there.
to.
Yeah, yeah. We should be talking about that more.
They should be.
Mm-hmm.
The youth back in the
Years back in
1960s, they used to talk
they used
about
to
it
talk
in
about it
evangelistic
in
series, and I
evangelistic.
know John had talked
I
about
know
those things.
John had talked about
I
those things.
remember in the tent meetings
But
when I
I
was a
remember
kid,
in
they
the
used to
tent
talk.
meetings when I was a kid, they used to talk
Yeah.
about it.